Well, today we've got one of my most important health mentors on the Made to Thrive show. He's the ultimate, what I call quantum cardiologist. He's written an incredible book called The Paleocardiologist, which spoke a lot about the paleo diet and how important food is. But more important, I've seen this doctor be the real deal, because doctor, as you know, in my community means teacher. And he has been teaching principles that I've been listening to for the last 5 years. So welcome to the show, Dr. Jack Wolfson. What a privilege, what an honor to see a man who just declares truth unashamedly. I'm so grateful for the next hour or so.
Steve, thank you so much, for that intro. I appreciate it, and I think, listen, all of us are working together for truth in the world, for health in the world, and knowing and always looking that there's a for the better way. And we've just seen so many people get sick in our personal lives, in our work lives, and we've seen just the destruction of what unhealthy behaviors can do to people. And then we realize that the answer will never be in a prescription bottle. It'll never be with a pharmaceutical. It'll never be injected into us. Health comes really when we give the body the tools it needs to get the job done. And that's the purpose of my book. And, I don't think I've ever been called a quantum cardiologist before, but, I think, listen, is that, quantum is kind of a buzzword in health and the wellness space. But I think it is appropriate that by, again, appreciating what we can do naturally, that's where we're going to get the ultimate in health.
Brilliant. So I've got the title for your next book, Doc. It's The Quantum Cardiologist. And I think if you can get out more information and knowledge about how people can prevent disease, I think a lot of people are going to benefit, because, we know that, heart disease is the #1 killer in America. It's just one of the top killers in South Africa and Africa. Where's it all going wrong?
Well, I think, where it goes wrong really is that, it's kind of, from the top down, is that it starts with the educational process, and that often comes from the government, but the government is controlled by pharmaceutical companies and corporations in general. So we kind of, all look, we've been kind of sold this bill of goods that, well, it's not our fault, for heart disease. It just happens as we get older, or it's genetic and everybody's getting it. But, when it comes to all things health related, there's always a cause of why people get sick. And us medical doctors and, some of the best medical doctors in the world have come from South Africa. But even their training down there in South Africa, in the United States, around the world, again, it's all based on the pharmaceutical model. And that really starts from the early 1900s, where there were a lot of natural ways known to stay healthy, but that kind of got tossed by the wayside by the Rockefellers, and the Rockefeller, what would become the Rockefeller Foundation, how John D. Rockefeller, the oil baron, basically created a scenario where medical education now all was going to be all about the pharmaceuticals and not about actual health and wellness strategies. So a lot of natural medical colleges were shut down, and again, it became that pharmaceutical model. And that's really where just so much destruction started, in the early 1900s.
Yeah. Now, you've got the most fascinating story, because you married a chiropractor and she started your journey in terms of, holistic health, looking at ways to treat the body, not only through pharmaceuticals and interventional medicine. Tell us a little bit about your story, because I find it fascinating that you, after so many years of studying and then becoming a registrar, a consultant, and working all these years, have now changed to treating patients in a very, very different and unique way.
Yeah, I'm a conventionally trained cardiologist like my father before me. I went through 4 years of medical school, 3 years of internal medicine, 3 years of cardiology. So again, I finished up my college, at 21, and then I finished up my medical training. I'm 31 years of age, and I become a cardiologist just like my father. Angiograms, pacemakers, working in the hospitals for countless hours. And around that time, my father started becoming sick, and he was eventually diagnosed with a Parkinson's-like illness. So I saw all this sickness around me. I saw the sickness in my father. And eventually, my father gets his official diagnosis at the Mayo Clinic, so one of the most prestigious hospital systems in the entire world. And at the Mayo Clinic, the head of neurology says, "We have no idea why your father has this. We have no treatment for your father, and your father will be dead within 3 years." Well, on the heels of this, I meet this woman, and she's a 29-year-old chiropractor. And she
Yeah.
tells me, you know, this is why your father is sick. She gives me all the reasons why he's sick. He doesn't eat well, he doesn't sleep, he doesn't get sunshine, he's around radiation, he drinks too much, he takes this poison called Lipitor for cholesterol. And in short, your father is sick because he has a very unhealthy lifestyle and nutrition. And most medical doctors would run from that person. Like, what are you talking about? I mean, like, where does all this come from? None of that's true. But what she had to say made perfect sense. So here comes this chiropractor. She's got all the reasons why my father's sick. Mayo Clinic has none of the reasons why my father's sick. And what she had to say, of course, like I said, just made total sense. And that's when I started to change. And now she got, of course, a lot more vociferous in this, and basically saying that your medical career, Jack, is a fraud. Your medical paradigm kills people. Your procedures are worthless and dangerous. Your pharmaceuticals are worthless and dangerous. Again, you need to embrace all these things, not only for your patients, but also for yourself, because you are going down the road of your father. And Steve, I have no doubt that I was actually, heading down that path of destruction, just like my father. So for myself, for my family, for my patients, I changed everything, and I became, the man, the physician, the person that I am today.
In fact, that's an amazing story. I do want to sort of dive into a little bit of the detail there, because many doctors, conventional doctors, have heard that story come from naturopathic doctors, doctors of Chinese medicine, chiropractors, and yet they've dismissed it. Where were you that you were just so open to hearing, the possibilities of another way, or the possibilities that actually there was some truth to what your future wife was saying?
Well, I think, I don't know, maybe this takes us back to the quantum cardiology thing. Again, maybe on some quantum level that, and it's quantum and maybe spiritual as well, that I was selected to be this vehicle, to be, conventionally trained, to have that backstory that I have, and then be able to influence so many people because of kind of where I came from. So it's not surprising to hear someone who grew up in a chiropractic or a naturopathic household with these kind of views. But for me to understand the entire medical system, the entire medical paradigm, to be born and bred into that, and yet be able to make the change, maybe it does, again, give a little bit of a different perspective for those people that are reluctant to see the change. Now, there are other doctors that are like me. There are other medical doctors, again, and we can go down the list of so many people who have made the change, and more are coming. Now, the question is, why don't the rest of them see what I see and what you see? Where are the rest of those people? Well, again, it's a major shock to the system, and takes a tremendous leap to be able to say, wow, everything I did learn was, again, just a foundation of fallacies, a foundation of lies. So to be able to give up everything we've ever been told is a difficult proposition for many people. A lot of people can't do that, number one. Number two, there's also again, the safety in numbers, not willing to speak out or step out. To always be a conformist. And though, so other cardiologists, they don't want to speak this way because, again, they're concerned about how they will be perceived by their peers, by the governing bodies like the American College of Cardiology or the American Heart Association. That's number two. And then, of course, number three is the financial ramifications. If you speak out against pharma, if you speak out against your, your revenue stream, how are you going to make money? How are you going to pay your bills? How are you going to pay back your school loans? So now you have all these different reasons why the medical doctors want to just stay in their lane, stay in their place, not rock the boat. But again, there are so many of us again that are waking up to the reality and risking it all, like I've done, to do the things that I've done. But you know what? That's the only way that we're going to save this planet. We're going to save ourselves as a species on planet Earth, is to awaken to this reality.
That's incredible, Doctor. And it reminds me of my time with Professor Noakes, who also decided to speak the truth. He got really hammered from all different angles, had to go through a massive trial. He put a lot of his own reputation at risk, and so have you. Is it just a matter of just declaring the truth at all costs and just, just trusting that the, people around you and your community, your close family support you through, declaring the truth? Is that what it's about?
Well, I think that, once again, I lost a lot of friends. I've had a lot of scrutiny. I've had a lot of run-ins with medical boards. But again, I've gained a lot of new people. I've gained a lot of new friends. I've gained new family. So you and I have never met in person, but again, you are my friend and family, much more so than people that I've known and family members that I've known for many, many years. And that's okay. It's a lot of people are afraid to speak their truth. They don't want to do it in person. They don't want to do it by phone. They don't want to do it on email or social media. But now is the time to speak out. History is littered with people, again, who 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 stayed in their lane, who stayed quiet, while governments, while dictators, while kings, while corporations and pharmaceutical companies and and polluters of the environment have destroyed the planet. People have sat by the wayside because they're afraid to speak out. And it's just a horrific thing. Um, and again, I can only push people to, again, speak their truth, because that's the only way we're going to change things. I mean, again, so many different things where, again, we need to let our opinions be known, and in doing so, we're going to change other people. We're going to upset people, and that's okay, but that's how change is going to happen.
Incredible. Thank you. I do want to take two case studies. One is my little daughter. She's 4 years old. And if you were speaking to parents out there in terms of their future children, their heart health, what would be the top sort of pieces of advice, the top 5 pieces of advice for the next generation, other than education? I mean, obviously, you're a doctor, you're a teacher. That word doctor is docere, it means teacher. So you're teaching adults, you're teaching people the ways that they should look after their heart. But, what can the parents do with their children now growing up? What are the most important things?
Well, I mean, obviously, there's so many different things we could talk about. We could talk about organic paleo nutrition. We can talk about the importance of sunshine for everybody. We can talk about the importance of sleep, the importance of avoiding technology and EMF exposure and blue light exposure, with you and your orange lens glasses there, protecting yourself from the blue light exposure. We can talk about stress-free children. So let's go right down that into the stress factor, which leads us into school. Society has been built over the last 150 years with sending children to school as soon as they're old enough to get out the door. And in some cases, that's really as soon as they're born. They go right into daycare. They go into preschool. They go into pre-K, into kindergarten. This whole educational construct is absolutely cataclysmic, and it's not something that, again, I really thought of for many years, and certainly not how I was raised. It was like, boom, as soon as I was 3 years old, I was in preschool, and at 4 years old I started kindergarten, and on and on and on, marching right through the whole thing until I'm 31 years old and I'm a doctor, and I'm super successful financially and respected and all this stuff. But somewhere along the line, I missed the truth. And the point I'm trying to make is that children should be at home. Children should be at home with their parents and with their family and with their siblings and with their friends. That's how it's been for you know for millions of years. We don't ship our children off to schools to be educated and indoctrinated by somebody else and somebody else's values and somebody else's agenda. And there's some fantastic books that I encourage any parent to read. You know, Free Range Kids, Free to Learn by Peter Gray is another book that I recently read. And during this whole pandemic, what we have really taken out of it is that our children, my 13-year-old, 8-year-old, they were in a small private school, a Waldorf educational school that I think has some value to it and was not like public education indoctrination, but nonetheless, that program has its own agenda. And what we have learned out of this is that we are done with the education indoctrination model. Our children are going to learn the things that we want them to learn, but they're also going to play, and but through play is how they will learn and get educated. So I
Wow.
don't know if that was more than you bargained for in that commentary. And again, it goes into, well, you know, what do I do? You know, I work, my spouse works, we all have to work. I don't know anything about teaching. You don't have to know anything about teaching. You don't have to teach your kids physics, you know, and you know, neuroanatomy. Kids, children should be children, and they learn from other children. They learn on the playground. They learn on the yard. They learn outdoors. That's the messages of what we want to teach the children going forward as we indoctrinate them, as far as, like, you know, we're just trying to create little mini physicists and biologists, you know, and mathematicians, and trying to, again, force feed education in the children. We're destroying the spirit of childhood, and again, it leads to so much sickness later on.
Yeah, that's incredible summary there. What I've taken from that is that you want your kids to just have a curious mind, keep learning, have the ability to be the greatest voice and the greatest teacher as they grow up, and then facilitate learning in different areas. So, yeah, there's a big move in South Africa for unschooling or homeschooling or different ways of education that C19's brought through. And so we're considering that with my 4-year-old. We've got a 16-year-old who's gone through the traditional way, who's starting to think possibly there's other ways for, you know, high school and education and that. So thank you for that. The second scenario I want to take you in is, I'm a marathon runner. I've probably run over 20,000 miles in the last 35 years. It's an incredible time for me because it clears my mind. I've done the Comrades Marathon, which is a long 56-mile race that happens every single year. And my wife said, listen, you've got to go to the cardiologist. You've got to go and check your heart out because you just run 6 days a week. It could cause damage. And I went to a colleague, a hell of a nice man, but, you know, there was just nothing else than an ECG stress test. There was an echo that was done. He did it professionally, but I'm just not sure that all the tests were done, all the, you know, the cardiac function tests that needed to be done were done to ensure that I'm, you know, not damaging my heart, that long-term cardio or long-term strength work would damage me. Tell me about the cardiac function test that I should have had done probably at a functional cardiologist or a paleo cardiologist or a quantum cardiologist.
Well, you know, one thing that is often done in this scenario is a CT scan. And I'm happy for you that you did not have a CT scan, because a CT scan is a highly ionizing radiation based test, where again it is the summation of hundreds of X-rays that are then run through a computer model to generate images. And often even holistic or natural cardiologists, as they call themselves, or often considered, they recommend a CT scan. I'm against CT scanning because, again, they cause heart disease, cause cancer, cause brain disease. So what CT scans have identified, though, in in athletes, endurance, prolonged endurance athletes, marathon runners, that actually they have an increased risk of coronary artery calcification, or essentially coronary artery disease. So why is that? Well, when I used to run marathons and triathlons and stuff like that, the way that I behaved and the way everybody else behaved there is that, people would run a mile and they would have a power bar. They would run a mile and have a packet of goo. They would have all this high quickie carb with synthetic artificial ingredients. So as your body is being active, and even as we're inactive, even while we're sleeping, we are generating what's called free radicals. We are generating a lot of metabolic or cellular garbage, cellular waste. And unless we have the ability to take out the garbage, unless we have the ability to um, uh, uh, placate, that body waste with antioxidants. So as we create oxidative stress, we need antioxidants. Well, goo and power bars and Krispy Kreme donuts, I was in a race where actually they were passing out donuts every 20 miles. There was a donut stand, and I partook in that. I was like, wow, donuts are included. I'm eating all this stuff. Well, it's not surprising that people drop dead during these races. It's not surprising that this inflammatory oxidative stress leads to disease. So I'm not opposed to endurance activities, especially like you said, when that is your space, that is your quiet space, that is your moment of peace, clarity. I often get my best creative thinking is often while I am running, or I am biking, or I am on the trail, even hiking, or stand-up paddleboarding or kayaking. Um, Another good segue here is doing all these activities outside, and goes back to children playing outside as opposed to being inside under fluorescent lights. So again, I'm not opposed to the activity. So if we're not going to do CT scanning, and if we think that stress testing is not of any value, because you, Steve, could say, hey, listen, I just ran 56 miles. That was my stress test. I didn't have any symptoms during that. So stress testing has no value. Cardiac ultrasound in that scenario has no value. What has value is laboratory testing. What are your markers of inflammation? What are your markers of oxidative stress? Because if those markers are low, then you're at low risk of having cardiovascular events, heart attacks, strokes, rhythm issues, dying. What are your levels, again, of vitamin D? What are your levels of homocysteine? What are your levels of uric acid? What are your advanced lipid particle numbers? What are your markers of blood sugar, including fasting insulin and hemoglobin A1C? What are your thyroid numbers, autoimmune numbers, intracellular vitamins and minerals? What's your omega-3 levels? What are your heavy metal levels? What are your environmental toxin levels? What are your mold mycotoxin levels? These are the most advanced testing in the world, that there's nothing dangerous about them. There's no radiation exposure. And again, they provide real value that you can also check over time. So you can say, well, at time 0, this was my number, and now I've changed all these different things, and 90 days later, repeat the testing and see how we do.
Fantastic. And a lot of functional medicine tests there that my community know about: HSCRP, the homocysteine, having a look at all the oxidized LDLs, particle number and size. So thank you so much. Tell me a little bit about HRV. Do you think it's a good idea? Heart rate variability. There's a lot of technology with that now, monitoring the trends of HRV as a stress score and an indicator of health.
Yeah, so I think that outside of the blood test, there are other things that we can use. So one thing I like is for example, like nitric oxide test strips. So there's salivary test strips. They cost, like 20 cents a piece. You can buy them online. Again, they measure salivary nitric oxide, and the more nitric oxide that we are producing, the better off our blood vessel health is going to be, for a variety of reasons. There are other markers of nitric oxide or endothelial function, things like, the EndoPat, for example, which is a $30,000 machine that some doctors have, and again, looks at endothelial blood vessel health. And you mentioned things like, heart rate variability, HRV. The higher the heart rate variability, the healthier we are, according to many different scientific studies. What is heart rate variability? it is the time difference in beat to beat variation. So if we think of a heart that is beating 60 times a minute, 60 beats per minute, well, every second a beat is coming in. There's 60 seconds in a minute, 60 beats, in a minute. Again, every second a beat's coming in. But the more variation, so it's not beating every second, sometimes it's a little less than a second, sometimes more than a second. And again, those changes are found to be beneficial. Younger people have a very good heart rate variability. Older people have a very poor heart rate variability. And the more, again, or the less our heart rate variability, as you pointed out, the higher our risk. So I think, again, that's also a great short-term marker where you can test someone's heart rate variability at time 0 and then check them 90 days later and see if all the different changes that we've done, whether through nutrition, lifestyle, evidence-based supplements, detoxification, if that has improved heart rate variability. I guess the good news is, Steve, is that invariably it does. People tend to get better, 99% of the time. For the small percentage that don't, again, now we have to continue with our deep dive and figure out why.
Good. Well, I've noticed from my community, I've let them know that when I go on holidays or I go camping or I go to a very, very big park, a safari area called the Kruger National Park, my HRV improves getting out of the city. Infrared sauna has helped me improve my HRV, my circadian rhythm, and making sure that I don't eat late at night at all. In fact, my HRV scores are best when I have lunch and I don't have dinner and I do long fasts. So HRV, I think, is something of the future that I think people can tap into. I know you got a special interest in toxicity and toxins. Glyphosate is still on the shelves here in South Africa. It's used extensively in gardens, in cities, and across the board on crops. Tell me a little bit about glyphosate, the damage that it's causing, and general toxicity.
Well, glyphosate, is on the shelves everywhere. And I'm not, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe some countries in Europe have banned it, but it's still all over the United States. Recent literature shows, and I posted this study to Facebook and it's on my website, that people with the highest level of pesticide exposure, they have triple the rate of cardiovascular disease death. And in the case of glyphosate, again, what glyphosate does is obviously a pesticide in general damages, it kills herbs, it kills pests, it kills and taints bacteria, and especially the bacteria in the gut. So, we know that all health starts in the gut. If we have damaged intestinal lining because of pesticides, then obviously we're going to have ill health consequences because of it. Glyphosate likely interferes with the amino acid glycine. Glycine is an essential amino acid, and low levels of glycine are linked to cardiovascular disease. Glycine as a supplement helps to lower blood pressure down, and again, glyphosate in particular interferes with that. So glyphosate, we know, lowers levels of glutathione. Glutathione is the body's main antioxidant produced in the liver. So again, glyphosate interferes with the production of glutathione, which is, again, a death sentence for cardiovascular disease, brain-based diseases. I talk about my father all the time, and my father, undoubtedly, his glutathione levels were probably around 0. I wish he was around where I wish I knew what I knew now to be able to test him and see where things, we're at, and be able to improve on that. But again, for people with brain-based disorders, usually it's a very low glutathione level that is at play. But, again, pesticides, it's destroying our planet, destroying our health. When I do the testing on atrazine, we do testing for DDA, which is a metabolite of DDT, which is still used around the world. Again, you mentioned glyphosate. There's many other pesticides that are happening, and the literature is clear. Now, one thing about literature, though, is that the science is only as good and trustworthy as the people that are doing it. And oftentimes, the sponsorship or the financial grants only will go to people that are producing literature conducive with those that are and expectations of those who are making the grants. So if it is the industry which so often sponsors and pays for medical literature, then you get the results that the industry wants. And that's why you may see some people say, oh, well, glyphosate's not a big deal. The answer is it is a very, very big deal.
Just your number one quick detox sort of activity or hack that you can just suggest to the audience and the listenership?
I mean, listen, I always go back to the simple stuff, is that it's sleep and it's sunshine. So, circadian rhythms, circadian biology,
Mm.
quantum biology, that happens only when we get appropriate sleep and we get light. We tend to, we always like to debate diet. What's the best diet? Is it paleo? Is it keto? Is it carnivore? Is it vegan, vegetarian? I propose to people, listen, number one, just get the chemicals out of your food. Just eat organic food. And then you can start the argument. But again, food is no more important than sleep. Food is no more important than sunshine. In fact, it's probably less so important than those two factors. So gravitate towards going to sleep shortly after the sundown. You will naturally wake up with the sunrise, and then to spend the day in and out of the sun. And that doesn't happen inside of a school classroom where, again, those children are bottled up and getting indoctrinated for so many hours of the day, and then they have these after school activities, that they do, and the homework that they do. It's destroying generation after generation, and that's why you and I are going to make that change.
Sounds excellent. Just tell me the value of community. Dr. Mark Hyman said the greatest force to bring about change is community. The role of a health coach, the role of a health advocate. I interviewed James Maskell from the Community Cure. How important it is, because doctors don't have the time often, they're inundated. If they do, they're doing functional medicine at a very high cost. It's not available to a lot of people. Health coach, health advocate, and the purpose of community.
Well, I mean, I think it's certainly if your career choice was you're an engineer, or you're a lawyer, or you are a bus driver, whatever it may be. You have your area of expertise. Well, health and wellness may not be your expertise, so therefore you need a guide. And who's a guide, and who is a fantastic guide? Well, there are obviously fantastic functional medicine doctors, and then there are, of course, there's nurse practitioners, there's chiropractors, there's naturopathic doctors, homeopathic doctors, but there's nutritionists, and there's health coaches and health advocates. There are a lot of people that are talking about this. So I think, selecting your health community, that's where it should start. I personally think everybody should start with a doctor of chiropractic, DC doctor of cause, and that should be their leader when it comes to health and wellness. Staying away from the medical doctor. You don't need the regular checkup. You don't need the medical doctor. You need a health doctor is who you should choose. Now, when it comes to community, well, a lot of people would say, community is good. A lot of people in all facets say the community is good. But again, what community
Yeah.
are we talking about? Hillary Clinton spoke of, it takes a village, but I don't want to be part of her village. I don't want to be anywhere near her village. The village I want to create is with people like you and I, Steve. I mean, my wife, your family, my family, families like ours. That's the community I want to be a part of. Or again, we are into organic food. We're into nature and mindfulness and brotherhood and true appreciation of the health and wellness model. Again, we're not about poisoning our bodies and poisoning our children, poisoning their minds. We're about, again, getting out into nature, spirituality, getting away from environmental poisons and chemicals. Like you said, you get up in a Kruger National Park where you can detox. Cities in the United States where, Los Angeles, New York, Chicago, Boston, Philadelphia, Phoenix, Denver. These are cataclysmic areas where sickness will not only prevail, but it continues to thrive. And we moved to, I don't want to say the middle of nowhere, but we moved, to the mountains, and life for us has never been better. It's really so fantastic to be able to do it. The literature supports it. Common sense supports it. As these, 5G installation and everything just gets more electrified and magnified, and interferes with us on a quantum level that then impacts our macro level. we need to get out of it, and
Mm,
we're running out of time.
yeah,
The planet is running out of time on this.
yeah. Two areas of tech that I think are going to be sort of growing. My view on CGM, reading Why to Eat by Rob Wolf, and how important glucose sort of stability is, not having these massive spikes, not having an elevated glucose level. Tell us sort of just the role with cardiology, and is CGM really valuable to a lot of people?
Well, I think that monitoring your glucose, 24/7. I think again there may be some value to that, but mostly, I mean, that's going to be kind of in the hacker space. I mean, that's going to be people like yourself, people that are looking to, really kind of get educated and really fine tune. But I don't think it's necessary for the masses. Listen, optimal glucose happens in many different ways, and of course. We always talk about the food story, so keeping your sugar intake to a minimum is going to be certainly very important for most people to keep their glucose level well controlled, so you don't damage all your proteins. You don't sugarcoat all of your proteins, which makes your proteins dysfunctional. So the food story is one of it, but again, is it any more important than the sleep story? We need to get adequate amounts of sleep to keep our blood sugar under control. Sunshine helps to keep our blood sugar under control. Avoiding chemicals and toxins and poisons that interfere with bodily function, again, helps to keep their blood sugar under control. Minimizing stress levels and chronic stress helps to keep the blood sugar under control, right? If you're constantly in fight or flight mode where you're secreting epinephrine, norepinephrine, cortisol, those all spike blood sugar. So as you kind of unplug from all that, as you get into more parasympathetic tone, your blood sugar will come down. Again, the physical activity, being active outdoors helps to control that. So it's not just about the diet, because again, I've seen a lot of people that swear, I've been following keto, I've been following paleo, I haven't had sugar in so long, and you go down all these areas. Well, you sure you're not eating this? Sure you're not eating this? Again, their blood sugar, it's not going to be 150, but again, is it 95 versus 85? Oftentimes, again, when it's 95, 100, again, it's these other lifestyle behaviors that are coming into play that help to control that. But I don't know if I think that CGM is necessary for the masses. I think for those people that are writing books, whether it's the Rob Wolfs, the Chris Kressers, the people that are really in, Ben Greenfield, that are really into the hacking modalities, just to kind of fine tune, where they're at. But again, I don't think it's necessary for the majority of people. And personally, I don't use it. I've never recommended it to any one individual person.
But Doc, it does give us, just to push you a little there, it does give us a good indication, because people say their diet's good, but actually their sleep's horrible, or, they're just not getting outside. So the sugar's high, but they say to you, oh, my food's fine, so, or they're eating organic, but they're not doing everything else you said. So it is sometimes a marker for people to see, because they think they're healthy, but actually the glucose is slightly elevated. They do an HbA1c, but maybe they've got issues with ferritin, so they don't understand that possibly that marker is not as accurate as it used to be. It could show something to some people that are not convinced about this whole move.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I certainly understand your point. I mean, but, as we do just routine blood work, and in that routine blood work, let's say every 3 months, well, in that you're getting your fasting glucose. Well, again, that'll give you a snapshot of that particular moment. It's not continuous monitoring, but it's still that, that one moment. And it's typically going to show, again, maybe the blood sugar is 87, maybe it's 93. Which tells you that, again, you're not perfect. If you want to get perfect, you want that glucose, below 85. Your fasting insulin level, what is that number? Is it 3? Is it 5? Is it 7? What do those numbers imply? Obviously, the higher the insulin level, the more insulin dysfunction you likely have. And poor blood sugar control that you have. But then that A1C, the A1C does have some faults to it, but again, I think a lot of it too, Steve, has to do with what is considered with the normals. So, whereas so many lab testing companies, and now the doctors see that, well, you're in the normal range. Your hemoglobin A1C is 5.4. That's normal. Well, hemoglobin A1C should be below 5. That would be truly normal on a paleo ancestor level. So that's what we want to educate the people on, as well. But
Good.
that's how I would look at it. There's other markers too of glycated proteins that you could see, also that help to give you some idea what your average blood sugar is.
You did an incredible podcast. I just want to pivot here with Dr. Jack Cruz, and he speaks about really eating according to your location, based on your your latitude. In terms of paleo keto, you've mentioned some food. Should people just eat seasonally? Make sure they eat mainly when the sun's up. Tell us a little bit about just your role from with food, and Dr. Jack Cruz with regards to diet.
Well, I think, listen, if we tell people to go to sleep after the sundown and wake up with the sunrise, well, invariably, if you're sleeping when it's dark and you're awake when it's light, well, the only time you could be eating is when it's light. All right. So let's get, let's get that, quite clear.
Yeah.
Listen, Jack Cruz is obviously a brilliant man, and so educated on so many levels. But I think, unfortunately, he's kind of taken the tact of food doesn't matter at all. It's all about everything else. It's all about, again, your environment. It's all about light. It's all about circadian rhythms. It's all about sleep. It's and avoidance of technology and stuff like that. I think, again, that his points are very valid, but to throw the food story out, I think is clearly wrong. And I think the message has to be, again, that you need to do all these different facets, and there's no reason to denigrate, the food people, but it's, again, to enlighten the food people and say, hey, listen, it's not just about the food. The debate of, about the food, and that's where I kind of go with it, is that again, if you want to be vegan or vegetarian, keto, paleo, carnivore, Mediterranean, again, we can debate all those different things. Me personally, I would never tell someone to be vegan. I would always tell people to eat seafood. I agree with Jack that seafood is the healthiest food on the planet. Eating whole, real sardines, eating shellfish. My family and I have been watching this TV show called Alone, about people that are dropped off into the middle of nowhere and how they survive. And so much of how they survive is just eating seafood. And again, they're eating like that whole fish, like whole salmon, and other fish that, again, provide all those nutrients, not just the fillet of the fish, but also the hearts, the brains, the organs of that fish. Eating a whole sardine or a whole anchovy, there's nothing healthier than that. There's no amount of kale and chard or anything that even compares to that. So we need to embrace that as well. But I mean, again, I think that Jack's message is very, very good, and it's really just a matter of, hey, just live with nature. And I think that's absolutely critical. But again, you can't forget about the food story.
Yeah, great. 2 last questions as we wrap up. Mouth disease, periodontitis, root canals. I mean, I've got a Dr. Levy in the background. It's not well known. There's so many root canals that get done. There's so few biological dentists here in South Africa. Just tell me your role in terms of root canals and just mouth, the microbiome in the mouth, the oral microbiome. How important is this? And should, the listeners and viewers do root canals, and what type of dentistry should they do?
Yeah, I think really this kind of points out to the fact of, like, talking to our kids, right? This is why you tell your 4-year-old, and I tell my 13-year-old and 8-year-old and 2.5-year-old of why we eat the way we do. Again, to keep that mouth healthy and well, and good oral bacteria, as opposed to, fluoride and chlorine. And again, back to those pesticides, hand sanitizers that everybody's using these days, again, that all destroys the oral bacteria and will, again, lead to periodontal disease. Give the body what it needs, take away what it doesn't, and we're going to have healthy teeth. The subject of root canals, I think, is obviously, catastrophic. I would advise anybody, again, against getting a root canal procedure. If the tooth is infected and it's a dead tooth, then the tooth should be removed. And to me, it should not be replaced. When it comes to people with root canals in general, it can be a difficult proposition. Not many people, oh, I've got 3 root canals and I want to remove them, or maybe it's in a cosmetic area. So again, there's lots of different factors. And what I would tell people, Steve, is that again, look at your blood results. And if you have a root canal tooth, yet your blood results look really good, your inflammation's low, your oxidative stress is low, blood sugar, all these things look under good control, then I don't think you need to remove your root canal tooth, especially when you feel good. I think it's kind of lower down the rung, not because it's less important, but because it's a big procedure to have it done. It can be expensive to have your teeth removed. It impacts a lot of different things in your life. So I'm not one of these people who says, wow, you got 3 root canals, go have them removed immediately. I'm not ready to go there yet. But again, if we find that there's still underlying inflammation, oxidative stress, cardiovascular issues, brain issues, on and on and on, then I think it's a time to remove, to go after the root canal. I would like to say that, my childhood dentist, he did the things he did for his own reasoning. And again, filling my mouth, full of amalgams that, of course, have either been removed or really kind of fallen out, by the wayside. It sounds very, I guess, maybe immature of me to maybe say I'd like to spit in his face. I'd like to strangle that dentist for doing what he did to me and countless other children. But again, there's nothing I can do about it now, only to educate other people. Again, to seek out that holistic dentistry. And the other thing is that, do children even need to go to the dentist? The answer is no, they don't need to go to the dentist. They need to stay away from the dentist. That's really what the key is. Live the healthy lifestyle, eat the right foods, live the right life. I do believe in flossing your teeth. I do believe in brushing your teeth. But otherwise, after that, just, live the lifestyle and you're good.
Wow. Thank you so much for that value that you've added there. The last question that I ask all my guests is, I've seen over time, and I've been dealing with clients and patients for 21 years, done over 120,000 treatments, that to maintain sustained transformation with people, to maintain healthy habits, the research shows that probably 80% to 90% of people that lose weight regain the weight within 5 years. In fact, often put more weight. What are your key factors or variables for people to sustain their transformation?
Well, I think, once again, the blood testing can be very helpful in the sense that it kind of keeps you on track. You get a blood test and it shows your numbers are off, boom, it gets you back on track. After that, again, it's just really just, some of the things that are easy enough to do, like, eating organically, like that's easy. I mean, you can still eat cookies and cupcakes and ice cream and alcohol and potato chips and pretzels. Just do it organically. That way you get all those chemicals and poisons out of the body. Again, really gravitating towards sleeping with the sundown, awaking with the sunrise, getting physically active, outside, outdoors. All those behaviors are pretty easy to do. Like, Steve, if I tell someone, to stop drinking coffee when they've been drinking coffee every single day for 40 years, that's a difficult proposition. Just do it, organic coffee. How easy is it to switch out toxic laundry detergent and use natural stuff? So that's a habit that people typically never go back to. When people fall off the wagon, again, it's of course, it's going to be they stop being physically active for a variety of reasons, or they go back to eating high sugar and carbohydrate foods. But again, what I would tell people again is really trying to maintain that daily physical activity, getting outside every single day, whether it's even just sitting outside, just getting outside every single day and staying with organic foods. I think that's a good start.
Well, thank you so much for this. The quantum cardiologist, I call him Dr. Jack Wolfson. Thank you so much for the witness you are, the testimony you bring, the boldness and the courage. Maybe just a quick one as it just slipped my mind. Masks, yes, no, in this whole C19 time. I know you've been quite vocal on that. Just let the audience know.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely an anti-mask guy. My wife has never worn a mask. I've worn a mask for short duration, again, I think that whether or not they prevent anything is something to be debated. But I think overall, it brings the wrong awareness to people. We need to make people aware of health and wellness. That it's not going to be through a vaccine. It's not going to be through a mask. It's not going to be with hydroxychloroquine or with any pharmaceutical. Health is built from within. And by within, we're talking about food, sun, sleep, toxin chemical avoidance, right mindfulness, being physically active, good dental health, going to see your chiropractor, getting adjusted. Those are the ways that we're going to maintain health. It's not going to be injected. It's not going to be in a prescription bottle, and it's not going to be by wearing a mask. That's not the answer. The answer is to make ourselves bulletproof. That's the key. And then, finally, listen, for all these children that are being born into this mask society, I think it's going to be catastrophic on so many different levels, where a child should be born into the world where they're seeing faces and they're seeing their community, they're seeing their tribe of people. Now they get out into society, and all the child sees at home is their mother's face. The father's not around because the father's working, and then mom takes the child to the grocery store and everybody's wearing masks. I think it's again just it's the destruction of human civilization is what it is, and all we can do is continue to fight against it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time. Where can people connect with you? Where can people find you? I know you got a very successful Facebook following. I know you got a YouTube channel. The Healthy Heart Show podcast has been a resource for me. The incredible guests, incredible information there. Where can people connect with you, Doc?
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Listen, I've got an easy way to get a copy of my book. It's called freeheartbook.com, freeheartbook.com. Now, for people around the world, we got to charge international shipping. For people that are in the U.S., it's U.S. shipping. But my book contains all this health and wellness information, and again, and over 300 references as well. So some people would again choose to condemn my message and say it's not based on science. It's based on common sense, and it's based on science. Over 300 studies and research articles are documented in my book. So I would appreciate anybody coming over there, getting a copy of that. We've also got some good educational material. People with hypertension, the doctorswolfson.com/hypertension or /cholesterol. Another marker that we didn't touch on that's really important is called LPA, or LP little a, and the doctorswolfson.com/LPA helps people with that condition as well.
Fantastic. Well, I salute you, Dr. Jack Wolfson. I declare favor and blessing over that you would just live a life of absolute significance and purpose. We need your voice out there. We need your purpose to flourish in this time. And I wish you all the best. And hopefully we're going to be able to connect in the future. You're more than welcome to come here. We've got great safaris. We've got great wildlife. Your dollar goes far away in this country, let me tell you that. So I know you've got South African friends, but thank you so much. I'm just eternally grateful for people like yourself.
Thank you so much for having me on, Steve. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Great.